Coming up next, one of the greatest living guitarists tells the story of two of the 80s most famous solos. One he played the hell out of, but it was cut from the song when it was climbing the charts to the top 5. But then angry fans called radio stations and complained, so they put it back in, and it's remained in ever since. And another solo was so inspired that one of the greatest guitar players and geniuses of all time actually called the band because he'd written one of his greatest songs, but he was afraid that he might have subconsciously ripped off the guitar part of this band's massive hit from the year prior. And he asked them if they'd listen to it and see what they thought. They graciously said it was similar, but it was a whole new song. We have the guitarist in question, along with another bandmate, to tell us the story of these two amazing songs. Stories next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you ever had 7 or 8 different accounts under different aliases so that you could have lots of albums from Columbia House, you're going to love this channel. Did it all the time. Subscribe below right now. Click the bell so that you always get our latest interviews and stories of the songs. That was kind of our generation's Spotify. Anyway, Columbia House. Also, check us out on Patreon. Become a part of curating this important history. So I'm excited to bring you another episode from our series, Revelations, where featured artists go very deep into their greatest songs and albums. We have a power ballad bonanza today. 2 of the greatest power ballads ever by the same band with 2 killer guitar solos. Talking about the number 4 smash, Who's Crying Now? And the number 12 1983 hit, Faithfully, by Rock and Roll Hall of Fame group, The One and Only Journey. Faithfully. After world domination in 1981 and 1982 with their number 1 album, Escape, fans were looking for an encore. Journey had killed it with Escape, with 3 top 10 hits, including Who's Crying Now, which we talk about today, with a solo that got cut when they released the single to the dismay of fans. Fans were really pissed off. This one went to the top 5 at number 4. Don't Stop Believin', that went to number 9, and Open Arms, that went all the way to number 2. It was their most successful album. That was until their greatest hits album would come out in '88. But it was their peak studio album for sure. They were so massive at that point, they even made a video game about the band. And this was back when there were only a few video games on the market. That's how big this band was. Still is, really. After a massive tour, this band went back into the studio immediately. And by February of 1983, they had dropped their 8th studio album, Frontiers. This album went all the way to number 2 on the Billboard album charts. Now remember, this is one of the most competitive years ever, with Michael Jackson Thriller dominating the top spot for most of the year. In fact, Frontiers was at the runner-up spot, number 2, for I think it was 9 consecutive weeks. Just one behind Thriller. The album started off with the monstrous and anthemic Separate Ways, Worlds Apart. That peaked at number 8. And then Faithfully went to number 12. And then Send Her My Love and After the Fall both went to number 23 respectively. 4 top 40 hits from one rock album, which was virtually unheard of for most bands, but not for Journey. They did it a lot. It was also 6 times platinum, with several classic rock staples beyond the singles, including Chain Reaction and Edge of the Blade, both great songs. And the album might have had even more hits. The album was finished and ready for pressing when, in a last-minute conference with Journey's A&R man, Michael Dilbeck, 2 songs were actually ripped from the original lineup that was going to be. They were Ask the Lonely and Only the Young, both of which would be hits later on. Only the Young, of course, went to the movie Vision Quest. That would go all the way to the top 10. And then Ask the Lonely was put on the soundtrack for Two of a Kind, and it hit number 3 on the rock charts. Both are heard all the time now. The album also became their biggest showing in the UK. It hit number 6 on the album charts there at that time. Of all the classic tracks on Frontiers, though, the one that still stands out for me and for many is Faithfully. It became a standard of the American rock canon with an absolutely inspired and heart-wrenching, sincere vocal by the voice himself, the great one, Steve Perry. A pure and mesmerizing guitar solo by the king of melodic rock guitar himself, Neal Schon. And written by keyboardist Jonathan Cain, whose piano part, especially the beginning, is as familiar as anything heard on radio over the last 50 years. Cain began writing the song while on a tour bus. He started with the words "Highway Run into the Midnight Sun." Into the midnight sun. He wrote them down on a paper napkin while they were headed to their next stop in New York. Apparently, he finished the song the next day, and the whole thing came to him in a matter of like 30 minutes. He would share that the experience was supernatural, spiritual. It was something that just had to come out. Any touring musician can relate to its tale of being on the road while having a family at home and how tough that separation is. So it's exactly what Jonathan Cain was experiencing as he was on this tour. In fact, Jonathan Cain and his then wife would divorce a short time later. Very tough. The music video was especially memorable. You know, Steve Perry's mustache and the shaving scenes. Lost without you. It actually made me want to try shaving for the first time at 8 years old. That's how much this music was always inspiring me. So many artists have been inspired by this song. Bryan Adams has said that his 1985 #1 hit was influenced by this song. He was opening for Journey on tour around this time, and it came to him. Now, that makes sense. Prince was influenced by it when he wrote Purple Rain. He incorporated it into his outro solo. He felt it was so close to Faithfully, he actually phoned the band. I'll let the band members tell you the story about that next. Here's Who's Crying Now.
I didn't know what to think, when I heard that song, because it was completely in a different realm. We had never played anything like that before. So it was like scary for me. I'm like, what is this, But great song. Caught on a one-way street. I was really searching for something to play on the end. And I think I was trying to play at the time, because it was something so different for us. I was trying to play it more jazzy and play more like a horn, like between trumpet and sax. I was trying to mix both styles and put that in the guitar, but it was a little too complicated for the song. And so I became really frustrated after about, a half an hour of like going and going and going. And I'm going, man, nothing's coming out, because if it doesn't pop out, it's just not coming. And so finally, I think Kevin Nelson just said, stop screwing around, man. He said, just play something really simple. All right. And so I thought I was being like a smart ass. And I went, you want simple? Here it is. And I played the simple little melody, and they went, that's it. That's perfect. And I'm like, what? And I was almost like scared.
Wow.
But that turned out to be like one of everybody's favorite guitar solos. So
that's the best part of that song.
Sometimes you have no clue. But the funny thing is that, Steve at that time wanted to chop out the solo.
Chop it out.
And because he didn't think radio would play it. So I said, no, you're not chopping it out. We had a big fight, because it was always like him and I in the studio, like we loved each other, but we hated each other.
Yeah.
And so I'd reach for the volume of the guitar on the board and I'd push it up, and he'd push the vocal up and pull the guitar back and say, that's not what they want to hear. They want to hear this, man. Then we have a big blowout, you know? But I said, no, you're not chopping it out. I said, if you want, the deal I'm willing to make and agree with is that you can put out 2 versions, throw it to all radio, whatever version they decide to go with, then I'm good with it. Because I know that it's not an ego thing between us. That's what happened. They put it out. The other one, without the solo, never saw the light of day. That was the one cool thing that I have to really give, our manager at that time credit for, Herbie Herbert, that in our contract with CBS back then, we had full control, artistic control of everything. They never heard one little bit of a song until the album was completely done. Sequenced, done, artwork, everything. Here it is. They didn't like it. It was like, we love it and it's staying.
Well,
and so when it came up and it said, we should edit out like in, Who's Crying Out? That's the perfect example.
Here are Neal Schon and Jonathan Cain on Faithfully.
Our producers at the time, Mike Stone and Kevin Elson, said, you need another power ballad for this record. And so I went out and I charted it in my own way, so a little roadmap, and so I could tell what part was coming.
And he had all these, and I said, take with this bit. I had 2 machines. I had a JVC and a JVC. And I would bounce them over back and forth, because it's the only way you do it.
Right.
So this bit goes into this bit, and try this bit.
And then John brought in the music the next day, and I listened to it and I go, I don't know what to do with that, because I certainly wasn't hearing it like it ended up.
And then we'd say, well, let's try this and let's try that.
I just remember Jonathan going, just think, you're always like so orchestrated in your head how you hear things, and so he goes, think like a French horn, and so it started with that orchestrated part and a few little, swells here and there.
The great thing about Journey was the time we spent creating and rehearsing. Herbie had a beautiful warehouse, and we spent 5 days a week working on our craft.
As I had just gotten this Lexicon 224, not a 224X, but the first 224 that they use in the studio for mixing. And I loved the way it sounded, verbs and pre-delays and slight chorusing. I mean, excellent sounding unit. They made me one for guitar. So I just gotten it. And I went, oh, well, I'm going to try this on this song.
Faithfully could go, as far as the fans are concerned, could go toe to toe with Don't Stop Believin'. I mean, that Faithfully means as much to people as Don't Stop Believin'.
It's still that big with fans every night when we play it.
It's a song I like to call a game changer song. You hear it and you're like, your life is different. Just like Don't Stop Believin'.
People are very connected with it. The feeling of the song, where the lyrics are. It was something real that he was going through. And that's why it's so good. I'm forever yours. First verse goes by, and I'm forever yours. Faithfully. Steve Perry, though, he just sang it to death. Sang the out of it, if I can say that.
I love it.
He put the soul in it. Great lyrics, great chord changes. And he's like, whoa, whoa. With Steve and I, we just connect. And I was assuming that I knew where vocals were landing and I was answering.
I mean, whatever differences the band members have, you and Steve and John had a chemistry when you were writing these songs that is right up there with the greatest in the history of rock.
I'll tell you what, every member in the band was in such fine form, Literally, we played it twice. Honest to God. And the first time was very good too, but the second time, there was just some magic. There are no guitar overdubs on that song. It was one take from the beginning to the end. That was it. We got engaged to that song.
Yeah.
And it's always been a special song. It's like one of the greatest songs, that John brought to the band. And I think that no other band could have played that song as well.
That guitar part that you came up with, I was playing it back to back with Purple Rain to my wife today, actually. And I was showing her, because at the end, Prince does a solo for a long time, the Faithfully really inspired Prince. And he heard that, and we wrote Purple Rain. Tell us that story.
Well, the best I can remember is Herbie Herbert got a call originally from management, Prince's management, and said, they were concerned because he had this song coming out that it was too close of chord changes to Faithfully. And if you listen to it now, you can hear similarities, but they are two different songs. And so, John listened to it, and he thought that it was a completely different song. He said, yeah, it's very similar, but I'm just grateful that you took the time to call me and actually asked if it was okay. So he said, go, He loved the song.
A lot of people wanted a piece of that action, I think. In the 80s, you guys certainly defined the power ballad many times. You perfected it.
Most of the ballads that we did back then, we were into that big symphonic, larger than life, like sound, power ballads, for real.
We're hanging out on the streets of San Francisco with Neal.
Started out when I was like about 14 here in this place. It used to be Keystone Corner. And there are many, many artists that played here. In the old days, it was a real cool little, very intimate blues club, jazz club. Actually, all this area in San Francisco and what we're about to see was all music. A good friend of mine, Jackie Villanueva, that I met when I was very young down in San Mateo, discovered me, brought me up, introduced me to the Santana Band. But before that, actually introduced me to Elvin Bishop, who used to play here. He was here for months. And, on, I can't remember, it was Tuesday or Thursday nights, they would have a gun off, and different guitarists that would come in and sort of have a shootout on stage. And I was holding court and I was winning. And so Elvin sort of, took me under his wing, and he dug the fact that I really, knew my blues playing back then. And had studied BB and Albert King and everybody else that was around. And so Elvin, after playing with him for about a month in this place, he goes, I'm going to take you, I got a present for you and a surprise, and I'm going to take you to the Fillmore West, and I'm going to introduce you to BB King, and BB will probably put us on stage and we'll jam with him that night. And I was like, really? That was like, mind effing. And so we went, and I met BB and Bill Graham for the first time. And we're backstage. He says, you guys come on stage and let's have a jam, And then before you knew it, I was like standing on stage at the Fillmore West on the opposite side of BB. BB was over here and I was over here. And I had studied his stuff, Honestly, I love BB. And so he would go, and I go, and I'd answer him with his own stuff, I didn't do the typical thing that a lot of kids do when they get on stage. They don't have respect for the artist that they're on stage for. I didn't want to showboat and just play a zillion riffs. And I played no more than he played. And I would answer him with his same vibrato, same, like attack on the strings, not really blaring loud, like pulled down, to where he was coming from. And so he loved that. He started looking around the corner like, who is that kid? And that was like, one of the fondest memories I've ever had, of playing in my first big place and meeting Bill Graham for the first time. But, this was a great place. The club owner was kind enough to let me in. I was way underage, obviously, and it was a bar, and so nobody under 21 was supposed to be allowed in there. And he allowed me to come in and leave through a basement door with Jackie. I'd tell my folks that I was going to jam at my friend's house. Or, he had garage bands,
There's been a lot of speculation that Steve Perry could actually return to Journey. It's been talked about for years, but guitarist Neal Schon recently shared a social media post with a picture of he and Steve Perry at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, with Neal saying something to Perry while he was chuckling. Neal also put a kind of a winking emoji that set off a wildfire of speculation online. Also, recently, Steve Perry got to live out a lifelong dream of duetting on a new song with his deceased father, Ray Perry. Put out a cover in November of Bobby Darin's Call Me Irresponsible, a song that holds a deep personal meaning for the star featuring Ray's voice. Steve Perry used technology to extract his dad's voice off a cassette tape. Then he combined it with his own recording, and he shared, that this was a song that his father used to sing to him when he was a child. Really cool stuff. What are your feelings on Faithfully and Frontiers, this band? And subscribe if you like this content. Help us keep the music alive. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth.